like I said last time, this line isn't great, but then we're going to put a large blend on there, so I don't think it's too important. I'll just look at the mesh on that. So I'm going to change the color of that area to all the same. Just means it's I'll take all the edges off. So it's such a soft shape there that, you know, that intersect doesn't really do much for us until we get into here where we've got a tight blend, but it's actually quite soft there. So that the fact that that isn't quite straight in terms of the surfaces doesn't really matter too much. You know, if I was doing an A-class model, I'd make sure that was completely straight or a nice gentle curve, but I don't think I'm going to worry too much about it for the time being. And so before we put the blend on there, because that was my next thought, I just wanted to see, because we've got this line coming around here, that we obviously the glass house area ought to relate to that in some way, which is quite difficult to see. You know, when you look at the mesh without putting sections on, it's difficult to see how they relate, but you'd expect some sort of relationship between this surface and this surface in terms of distance. So I'm thinking that what I'll do is, if I go into side view and I'm going to create a curve in this view that defines that shape, and then I'm going to create an MS draft surface all the way from the center line, so that we can see how that shape intersects the surfaces that we've got, and then we can compare it with the yellow surfaces. So hopefully that'll make sense when I actually do it rather than just describing it. So I want to create a curve that inside view looks like this, and what I'm first of all going to do is create a plane that's outside of all of this, the vehicle, so somewhere across here. So let's go into construction and we'll create a plane, and it's going to be in world space, so just parallel to this axis here, and I'm going to put it on, I'm going to use Alt and just put it on there. Now if I go into the information window, nothing selected. Let me just, oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's do Control Z. No, that didn't work. Let's snap it back to there. Just press the wrong buttons there. So let's go and pick that information window, and we can see what the Y value is of that relative to our world space. So just to make it a nice round number, I'm going to make it 1500, because it just means I can remember that easily, whereas 1400 I might forget. And then we can set that plane there. So the reason I've done that is that when I go into side view, I can now create a curve that's actually in front of all of this mesh here using that plane. I should call that plane something, put it on that, I'll assign it to our planes layer there, and I'll just call it Y minus 1500. I'll remember what it is then. So if we go into curves, and I'm going to create multiple curves here, because we've got quite a complex shape, so it sort of S's around there. I could do it all in one, but I think it's very flat there, very flat here. So I think I'd probably be best off doing it in 3 curves, one from here to here, sort of thing. One that's the SE sort of shape there, and another one that's that line there. So I'm just going to put in degree 2, change that up to degree 1 rather, change that up to degree 2. I mean, you could do that obviously multiple different ways. The only reason I did it as degree 1 to start with is if I do degree 2, that point's not going to be in the middle necessarily. Not that it's absolutely essential, but it's a good starting point. The other way I could do it is with edit point. So if I set that to degree 2 there and go click, we get a CV in the middle. That's slightly more efficient, to be honest, but any of those methods are okay. This one just doesn't put the CV in the middle if that's what we want. It's useful to have that as a starting point, I think. Now, got my surfaces here. Let's just take those curves off, and while I'm thinking about it, let's just take that. Let's just tidy this up. So I'm just going to put all of these surfaces into this layer called top and get rid of that whip layer. And I'm just going to create another layer, which I'm going to call curves 5. I mean, I've got loads of curve layers. I probably should clean those up as well at some point. They tend to be curves are, usually considered temporary. So I should, so every so often I can just open those up. Unless I desperately need those, I could get rid of some of those, I'm sure. Saves me then adding more and more layers called curve something. The other thing we can do here is we can squash the view up, so non-proportional scaling helps enormously with this. Green is not the best color actually here. Let's make it blue. Even it's quite difficult to see against that green, but never mind. So I'm now going to move these CVs around a bit. So I'm just trying to get, the reason for doing this is there's two reasons really. I want to first of all compare the surfaces I've got here to the edge of the yellow surface when I'm looking at it in Z view, but also we can create this curve and therefore an MS draft surface going in to Y0 as a way of, so it's a means of creating that edge there ultimately. Now this doesn't quite go far enough here, maybe. It is far enough. If I extend it a bit further, we can see where it's going, and it probably just needs to come down somewhere like that. Now this should start accelerating because we've got to get a shape there which is at least G2 into this. So in order to do that, we can increase the degree, and what we could do is just move that point up and down. So if I look at the curvature at the minute, it should be more or less a constant curvature because we've just created 3 points. I've just added the 4th point, but haven't moved it yet. So let's look at the curvature there. So you can see it's pretty constant because I've not changed this point. Maybe I'll turn that around the other way. Let's do that, does it? Just make it a bit bigger. I've noticed if you put in the comb scale now, this is version 2025. If I put in 1000, it doesn't do what it used to do. It just disappears, which I don't actually like. I think it should. It seems to say that it's got to a certain size and it doesn't want to display it. But I'd rather it did display it because at least I can see it goes off the screen. But I'm sure people will complain about that because it used to just go off the screen. Now, I want to put a bit of acceleration in there. If I just simply take that point there and move it up and down in Z, you can see there's a little bit of acceleration. It starts to get a bit tighter here than it does at that end, but it's not very much. And so to get that shape, if I could just keep on increasing the degree, if I made that degree 7, then we could get more acceleration on there, but it's very inefficient because we've got very high degree. It's not really necessary. So let's go back to whatever degree we had before. So that one there. So rather than just moving that CV up, if you move it slightly to the left as well, then you can get more acceleration. And the reason is because we're effectively pushing the CVs to that end. I'm doing it in reverse. I'm pushing that CV that way, and therefore it's the same thing. But I can also push that point further there, and you can see the acceleration is much better when I do that. And this one also I could push that way. obviously we might need to move it up and down as well, because it changes the shape, of course it does, but it's more efficient if we just push those across to that way and we get this nice acceleration with very few, very low degree. I'm just going to leave that as it is at the minute, because it'll all depend on how this feeds in, but hopefully with this sort of shape of curvature that it's getting tighter and tighter, that'll help when we go up here. So this is the next bit. I want to put in a line here. So again, let's use edit point this time. So I'm going to put edit point on. I'm going to start with degree 2. And one of the things here is that we've got this shape coming down here and they merge together. So ultimately that we'll have to make sure that that merges well. At the moment, I'm just going to do it just by looking at it. So again, because we've got, it's a fairly flat shape here, then it needs to accelerate into this area. But by accelerate, I mean it gets tighter. So let's put curvature on that one. And then I'm just going to move that point up, but also to the left. So I'm pushing it towards the left. So we get this start of acceleration going on there. And I'll move those points around. So I'm now just moving them up and down in Z. So I'm not going to worry too much about what goes on here. I think we need to do a bit more careful construction around there, but something like that. And that's pretty close to that yellow line there. If we want to make that accelerate a little bit more, let's change that. We just increase the degree a little bit, and I'll just push that a bit more to the left. What you don't want to do, you don't want to do that. You don't want to make it that dramatic, even if that was the right shape. It tends to cause problems. You want some sort of pushing the CVs to one end where the curvature's higher, but don't overdo it. When you're in this non-proportional scale, it's sometimes difficult to see exactly what that spacing is, and you think it's fine. And when you go into normal viewing, you may find that the spacing's just too tight, but this one looks okay. It's the CVs are getting closer and closer towards this end, and that's okay. So this area here, I'm going to just put as I say, I'm going to do that in one curve there. There's no reason to do anything else. There's no need for a flat in the middle, and this is going to give us a really nice shape through here eventually. So again, I can use edit point curve just as a way of getting there quickly. So if I say degree 5, and I'm using degree 5 because I want G2 continuity on both ends, and I can then not do that. Let's delete that. Do Control Alt, so we're hanging on the curve there and up this end as well. And if you prefer to use the blend, if you prefer to use the blend curves, do that. But I've got into the habit of doing this now, of using edit point curves. So if we then say align G2, we want history on. That's in here. Now, if I show you, so that's creating an edit point curve with degree 5 and then aligning with history on. In my shelf, so I go into my shelf here. So this is my own personal shelf. I've set this up myself. So I've got actually got 4 different versions, but I've got edit point curves here. So for example, edit point 5 is set up with edit point with degree 5 in there, and then next to it I've got G2 with history on, because I use that combination instead of blend curves. That's the combination I use. Don't really use the other ones, but they're in there for completeness. If I just wanted a curve that was G1 on both ends, then I'd be using edit point 3 and then G1 continuity. Likewise, if I wanted G3, I'd have edit point with degree 7 and use that with G3. So you can set that up yourself here if you wanted to. I don't know if just explain how to do that. So if I create a new tab, just called tab here. So if you wanted to do that, you'd go into curves here. You just drag and drop. This is with the middle mouse button. I'm just dragging that into there, and I can just do multiple versions of the same function. And you can then change that one to whatever you want. So if you wanted that degree 1, you could do that. This one degree 2, this one degree 3, for example. Obviously you can't tell which one's which, but if you press, in this version now, you use the middle mouse button and you go into edit. So that was middle mouse, and let me just cancel that again. So it's middle mouse and edit. So this is in 2025, also into 2024, the same thing applies. So it's not obvious that's where you go, of course, but you can also delete them. So that just takes it away. So if I wanted to say that was EP, whatever it was, degree 2 or something, actually it doesn't let you do that. Obviously it's limited in how many characters you can have. And then you can say OK. The other thing that I've done in some cases, so if I look at my, you've seen the puck. So on the puck, it's the same thing when you're doing an edit. So I've created these 3 icons there because I couldn't really. So they're just surface continuity. I didn't like having the surface continuity buttons there. I couldn't tell which was which, and so I've created my own icons. You can do the same here. So that with the puck, it's custom puck editor. So it's the same sort of principle. It's just like creating a shelf, and you have the same thing. So you drag that up and you can go into edit. So in this case, I've gone into edit, and you've got this option of creating your own icon. So if we wanted to create an icon here, if you found that it was difficult to read, or you just want to have some fun, you can just go into edit. The easiest thing to do is export the current icon. So in other words, that one, and you can export it. I've got it under here. I've put it under Documents, Autodesk, Alias, Icons. So you can call that EP2, for example. And then you can go and go into that folder, if I can find it. Documents, Autodesk, Alias, Icons, or wherever you want to put it. So there's that one. You can go and edit that in Photoshop or wherever. So let's just do that. Photoshop's open. Might take a little bit of time. I'm sure your Photoshop skills are far more advanced than mine, which are pretty basic, but so if you wanted to do something with that, and make it look like that, if you really wanted to, and then you can just save that over the top. Yes, please. So you've got this lovely icon that I've just created here, and then you can now go and open the file browser and just change that and OK it. So you've got your own icon. So if you want to spend plenty of time designing your own icons, you can do. But these are the only ones I've found were necessary for me, because the standard ones there, that SurfCon one, I just couldn't really see it in amongst everything else. So that's why in the puck I've created them as PTC there, just so that they're clear to me. Yeah, so this is how you create your own shelves and things, but you can have, as I say, you can have multiple ones. If you just set that one up as degree 2, this one can be degree 3 or whatever, as many as you like, which is how I've got my shelf. I've got multiple ones of those, etc. I've got the surface continuity ones down here. I didn't use the PTC display there, but I'll get rid of that anyway. Okay, so coming back to this here, so let's put curvature on here, and because I've got history on here, I can just query edit this blend. I call it a blend curve, but it's not a blend curve in the sense of the menu of blend curves. It's just an edit point curve. Now the reason that doesn't look as though it lines up in terms of curvature is simply I've got different scales on all of them. So I ought to do that, pick them all and then just change the scale to the same to make any sense, because now you can see that, you know, we've got G2 there. And then it's a question of making that. If you wanted G3, of course, you can, you know, you can do that as well. But I'm just going to make this G2. And you can just adjust these CVs until we've got what we want. So what I'm trying to do is keep the spacing of those CVs not completely regular, but not too ridiculous. I don't want to go over here and cross over in this case. But you just have to keep going backwards and forwards, trying to get the best fit. And you notice I sometimes end up moving the end point, because sometimes you find that's not in the right place. Something like that. Ooh. I should actually save this file because I've not done it yet. It's not quite on that shape there. Let's bring that up a bit more. And also, because we got history on, you know, the curve there is a bit high. This is really not a good color. Let me make this red. That's a bit better to see. But because we've got history on, of course, we can also modify the parent curve. So if you find that's a bit high there, maybe we need to drop the parent curve down. And as I've said before, you know, the mesh that we're working with has come from, you know, a system where it's no doubt it's not that easy to control the exact shape of things, so we don't have to follow it exactly, but it won't have the precision that Alias has got. But so something like that. So let's have a look at that there. And then I'm going to just, I want to trim these curves back. Now, let me just save again. If I just make a copy of those, Control C, Control V, and then I'm just going to move that up here. Because I've got history on, this is what you've got to be careful of. If I go into trim here and try and trim that back, it does actually say it does say it's got a construction history, so it actually does delete the construction history. Because sometimes you find if you've got history on something and you do that sort of operation, then everything goes wrong. So in fact, in this case, it was okay. But just to be on the safe side, it's best to really delete the history before you start. And also, you won't keep getting those messages up. But if you're going to trim anything back, that's good to do that. Then we don't get the message coming up. And so I can trim those back to there. Come on, trim. That. If I just want to make sure that that is actually where it says it is, because I often don't, you know, don't completely trust any system, but under locators, I think it is. No, it's not. Is it under? It must be under evaluate. Oh, it's under here, isn't it? Yeah. So under surface con here, you've also got curvature continuity. So if you just want to check that that is actually where we think it is, we can put curvature display on there and just pick on the point between the two. So it tells me everything's 0 there, just to make sure. But you don't there's only been error probably if this curve wasn't quite on that curve, and then that might give you something that you didn't expect. So let's delete all of the locators. In other words, in this case, the curvatures. If you remember, this is on y minus 1500. So we're going to create an MS draft surface next, and so this is going to be a construction surface for all of this, and we're going to put history on this. So I'm going to create an MS draft surface in the y direction, and we're going to just pick those curves, that one, and that one. And I do not want that. You see, it's put in 49 spans and degree 5. I don't want that. And the reason it's done that is we've got single surface on. So I want multiple surfaces on. In other words, respect the original curves. Also want history on, which we've got, because I might want to change those curves slightly to change those up. You can also say Bezier curves, just to make doubly sure in this case that we're getting single spans, in other words, on each of those surfaces, which we are. And then the length of this, we need it to go back to y0 basically. And hello. Oh yes, of course, this is yeah, so the original world axis is here, just grayed out. You can just about make that out. And so we haven't quite reached that, and that's because the length is only 1300. We need to make it 1500 to take it right to the center. The alternative is we just move all the curves into the center and do it the other way around, but since we know that's 1500, that distance, if you find it's going the wrong way, just flip the surface around. That takes it around one way or the other. Just make sure you got a draft angle of 0 and not something else in there. Otherwise you won't get what you think you're getting. So when we shade that up, you can see it sort of, it will often look a bit like this, where it might come and go on the data. You can see it crosses the data there, and then it seems to be above it, but it may only be a tiny bit above it, and it's just enough for you not to be able to see what's going on there. But that looks pretty good. So I'm now going to create another layer here. So I'll call this Glasshouse. Or if I wanted to, you know, you could create a folder in here for the construction. You can do this any way you like, but if I've created a folder for construction, or I could create a folder here for Glasshouse, all sorts of different ways you could do it. I'll just call it this con for construction, and just put that in there. And then I'm going to take these surfaces here and align them there. Now, it doesn't look to me as though I really need the history anymore. Of sort of, that's pretty close. The only area I'm going to modify is around here, and that, or may have to modify, and I'm probably going to do that with the surface rather than curves anyway. So I've got that assigned. I'm just going to delete the history of that now. I just decided I don't really need that. We should put the curves in there as well, just for good measure, but we probably don't need those, to be honest. They're now, they've served their purpose, and really we can get rid of them. What I'm interested in looking at is, first of all, let's take off the so we've got all the surfaces off there, haven't we? So we've just got, yeah, that surface there. Yeah, so that's all mesh. So that one and that one, just want to make those the same color. Just so that we can look at that as one thing. And you can see the way this intersects there. So you want, you know, when we surface this, we want this to be, you know, it sort of tapers down, this gap here tapers down, and then becomes fairly constant for a while, and then opens up again. So we want to make sure that we get something like that sort of relationship going on our surfaces. So let's take, let's take the mesh off and bring in the top surface. So this is where, this is the same thing but with the surfaces. This is the intersect that we have here. What happens around here, this has got to blend in somehow. Not sure how that's going to work at the minute, but let's concentrate on this area because I want to try and create this blend really. So let's just do these big areas first. So I'm going to take these two surfaces here, and then I'm going to go into surface edit, find the intersect between those and these. So I don't really need the curves and surface on here. I just want it on these surfaces here. I don't want history on either. So this is creating curves on surface there. And then if we bring back the mesh, so these curves on surface, that one disappears under the mesh, unfortunately. We don't actually want the glass house mesh, so we just want that side. So you can see this line here needs to relate to what's going on here. That's what I was trying to do there. It looks to me as though that's pretty constant, to be honest. So that's quite good. This one opens up, so that's also fine because it means that we don't have to worry too much about the exact shape there. So now we've got this in plan view. The other thing I want to do is, I've got that MS Draft surface. I now need to create some curves going around here in that plan view. So let me just I'll take the glass house away and just use that bit. So again, like we had, with this plane here, we actually need a plane above everything so that we can put the curves in. It just means it's easier to see what's going on. We could just take that plane and put it up there, to be honest, but usually I'll create another plane. So if I go and click on planes there, because we've got other geometry in here as well, let's put the glass house in there. So let's make a plane above everything, and then we can use that for anything else that we need. Like, for example, we might want a plane up here where we can create curves that we can project onto the A pillar, for example. So let's go into construction, plane, world, and I'm just going to pick a point up here. And again, a nice round number is good. So we've got 1400. Let's make that 1500 again. So that one's 1500 in Z. It's on the right plane, and we'll call that Z 1500. That's easy to remember. And yeah, if we open up the plane layer, you've actually got these as objects in here, so I can switch that off in the plane layer if I wanted to, and likewise with that one. So another way of switching planes on and off. If I want them all off, of course, I can just switch the whole plane off. So if I now set that CP there, let's get rid of the grid. Let's get rid of the glass house mesh, and we're looking at this edge here. So we don't need anything else on at the minute. We just want to create some curves here. So across the center line, of course, we want a symmetric curve. So we'll do edit point. Let's make it degree 3, and it doesn't matter where we pick, just there and there. I'm not in top view, am I? You can tell it's in top view when it goes green, and because I wasn't quite in top view, the curves just ended up there, which isn't useful, not what I wanted. So we'll just create an edit point over here and across there, and then we can, so that's created as a degree 3 immediately, and then we can go into symmetry, make that symmetric, and I'm going to create yet another layer with curves on. I will tidy them up in a minute because we don't need half these curves at all. But because I've just called them curves, I know they're probably temporary curves anyway, so that's fine. So I'll make that one green. I think that will show up. And then we can move the CVs around, because we know this sort of shape here will start off pretty round in the middle and then accelerate again. The curvature will start to accelerate towards that outer edge. So once more, we know, you know, from our looking at those the curves in side view, that the spacing of these CVs, instead of being completely uniform like that, we need to have spacing more like that, because we know it needs to accelerate. So we can do that without actually putting any shape into it. And then when we start to put the shape in, so I'm just putting those around, we can move that in board as well to create that. We can put some curvatures on there, so you can see the curvatures accelerate. Don't look great in the center at the minute, but we'll sort that out. And so I'm moving that in the Y direction, moving that in the X direction. Now, when so I'm creating these curves here, but we also, what we're going to do is project those curves onto these surfaces. When we do that, you may find almost inevitably there may be places where when we do that, we're combining two complex shapes together by doing that. And sometimes what you find is when you put it into 3D, when you project that onto there, the result is not great. You know, just by isolating it in side view and top view and combining the two does not mean we get a good curve in 3D. So we need to inspect those curves once we've projected them on, but we'll do that later. Let's get rid of that. But this is just a way of getting started, really. So here we're going to have a blend around here, and then we want to create some sort of shape here. This is a very soft sort of S-y shape. So because we're combining a curve with surfaces, what we don't want to do is create lots of little curves in this view and then try and project them on, because you then end up with even more curves. So if you imagine a curve going across that boundary, when we project it on, it's going to split it into two, and likewise across that boundary. So you might start off with two curves and you end up with four curves in 3D. The simpler you can keep it, the better. So if we can create that in one curve, when we project it on, we end up with three curves rather than four curves, and so forth. So we just want to keep it really simple. And like I say, it's just a starting point always. So this one here, we're going to create an S shape. So to create an S shape, we need at least degree 3, because degree 2 won't do it. Let's do degree 3. Pick a point there, pick a point there. I'm just going to move those in and out. Obviously, that's not going to get anywhere close to the shape that we want. This shape here that we're trying to achieve, because it's an S shape, at some point the curvatures will go first of all one way and then the other way. And so there's an area in the center when the curvatures cross over each other, it's essentially flat. So the regions of tightest curvature are at this end and this end. And so for that reason, you want to space the CVs towards that end and that end when you're doing this, really. So already you can see that's probably going to achieve that shape more easily. But of course, degree 3 is not going to be enough. So let's make that degree 5. And I will extend that out a bit, because I want to know that will go over that end without curving up. Because when you start to push the CVs towards the end, like we've got there, you can see that it starts to curve up if I extend it. So it's better to start off with a curve that's too big than too small. It's much better. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So we can move these in and out in Y, but we can also, if you feel that you need to. You can move them in X as well. Now this is actually got more curvature here than here, so that's flatter. So in fact, we probably need higher degree again. It's because I'm trying to do it in one curve, and it is actually a big old shape here. So I think I'm going to just go to degree 7. Now one thing that I should point out is in this menu here, in the transform CV menu, by default this pick box size is 4, and I've changed it yesterday to 20. So if you make it 4, what I was finding was happening was that if you try and pick near that CV, you see it's not picking because I'm not close enough to it. I have to go really close, that close, and the reason is the pick box, that it's saying, I think it would be 4 pixels essentially. So if you imagine a little box of 4 pixels around there, if you click within that box, it's going to find it. If you make the pick box, so what I sometimes find is I think I picked it, so I've picked that one. Now I think I'm going to pick this one, and I go to pick it and I'm moving it, and oh no, I haven't picked it because I wasn't close enough. So if you increase the pick box size, so if I made it 20, now when I go and try and pick, I don't have to get so close, so I'm a lot further away. So it just means it's a bit quicker. The only downside is, as you can see here, when I pick that, it says, well, which one do you want? Do you want that one or that one? Because they're both within that pick box size. So it's finding a pick box size that suits you, really. And I think 20 was a bit too big. Maybe, but it's trial and error. It's just a question of how accurate you are when you're picking. But 10 seems to be working better for me now. It'll depend on your screen resolution and your preferences, of course, but it's worth knowing that, especially if you keep finding that you're not picking things when you think you're picking things. It's because I'm trying to do things quickly, and when you're trying to do things quickly, I don't always get writing on the CV that I want. So now, as I say, that area there, the curvature there is tighter than here. This is quite flat, so I want CVs pushed towards this area a little bit. Likewise here. It's always a good idea to start with lower degree than you need and gradually increase it rather than just going straight to degree 7. It's usually the best policy, but what I don't like to see most of the time is stuff like this, where the CVs are going that way, which is the shape that they should follow the shape that we want. So we want a shape that's going that way. And if you look at that CV, it doesn't actually sit well with these. It looks like it's going the wrong way. So you should be able to see from the CVs. You should almost follow the shape of the curve just from the CVs without the curve being there. So that one there doesn't look very happy, and that's usually a sign that it just needs to go that way. So if I drag that one as well with it and push that across there, so it's telling me that I need to push a few more CVs into that corner, something like that. So now all those CVs are doing the same thing as the curve. That's what you should be aiming for. Don't really want them going the other way. Most of the time. There are times when that might be what you want, but not here. So what I've ended up with, again, this doesn't look very happy because that one's sort of, the spacing of that there's no reason for those to be so close together. This is not doing very much. This is the tight area, so this point really needs to go over here. So they get pushed together here to give us more of that shape. And again, we're starting to get that one looks like it's going up that way a bit. So maybe I've overdone that a little bit. Maybe we should try and space those out a bit more equally or something. Push that down there. It's never just one point that you'd want to move. I'm constantly going backwards and forwards between points. Because when you've got single span, then if I move a CV over here, then this curve changes here. If you had multi-span, then that's not always the case. You could move a CV here, and this area might not move at all. But if you can do things with single span, that's always the best. Right, I haven't put any curvature on this yet, so let's have a look at that. So that looks a bit weird. That doesn't look right. And we can actually see that in the CVs. That if you look at the angle between that point, and that point, and then compare it with these ones, these look very flat. This one doesn't look quite right either, because it needs to actually feed into the blend that we're going to put around the corner there. So actually it's going the wrong way. It's flattening off. So maybe certainly should save this. Maybe we should do this as multiple spans, but the only problem is if when I project it onto those surfaces, then that could cause us a problem. So let me just, because we want to make that tighter, we need to push that point to the left, just to push them together a bit. So we've got a bit more acceleration towards that end. It's tricky because we've got a lot of shape going on here. Now this point here, let's see if we can get rid of that. Problem on the end there. Well, I say it's a problem, it just doesn't look quite right. So I want something more like move it left to right. Something more like that, where it's actually flattening off. I mean, at the same time, we've got to respect the shape that's there. We can't just ignore that, of course. So well, let's go with that. That might not be 100% perfect, but it'll do the job for the time being. Like I say, when we project that onto the surfaces underneath, so those are surfaces. So when we project that, what's going to happen is that this curve here will become 3. So you'll have that bit, and that bit, which then gives us more opportunity, more CVs to deal with. So we can get rid of, we can improve the quality of the curvatures if we wanted to. When we get to here, this is going to split into 2, but actually we can avoid having to have that extra curve here, because if we make our blend come from this point, then we can get rid of that projected curve there, so we don't actually need that. We can just blend from there, and that will change things as well. So that's why I didn't want to spend too long on this curve, because when we do it in 3D, it's going to change it a bit. I mean, in fact, what we should do, because we know that this is going to split it at these points, so I'm just going to save that once more. Maybe I'll just copy that into my original layer, which must be full of rubbish now. But I'm going to, so just to keep that if I wanted to. The chances are, I mean, I've rarely been back into there. You know, it's full of stuff. Most of it's irrelevant. At some point, I'll clean up all the curve layers and that one, just get rid of them. I always find it useful to have something to fall back on, but eventually there'll be so much stuff in there that is just not useful, and I'm probably better off going back to a previous model sometimes. But so what I'm now going to do, because when we project this on, we know that this is going to split it up, so we might as well split it up now. So let's go into trim and just trim that. Yeah, so we want to trim it, but we want to do it with divide it into two instead. So there we go. So that was with segment rather than trim. So it gives us both bits. It keeps both bits. Otherwise, we lose that bit. So, and again, in my palette, or in the in here in the puck, have I got that? Must have that somewhere. There we are. No, I've only got trim. I haven't got divide. In my, let me go into my shelf. So in trim, and I've also got what I've called divide, which is actually the same function with segment on. So I just prefer the term divide because they use that elsewhere. And but it's basically that function done twice. So that's the trim version, and then you got the one with segment on, which is the same as, which is what I've just done with divide. So let's go into here, and we're going to trim that one into that. Notice it always does it in this view, which is because they're miles away from each other. So this is how it divides it up. If we were to project it onto these surfaces. So in fact, we have got a lot more CVs to play with. We don't have to keep this as degree 7. Now we've done that, we could actually, see what happens if we reduce that degree. This one, like I say, for simplicity, it would be ideal really if our blend started from here and went around there, and then we can get rid of that curve. We don't actually need that one. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's go into curves, edit point, somewhere up here, and we're going to drag that to the end there. And I seem to have degree 3 on rather than degree 5 this time. And let's just align that. So I'm going to align that with history on. So partial doesn't matter because it doesn't make any difference with curves. Again, watch out for that arrow, but it's just one arrow, which means it's at the end. This one will be 2 arrows because it's in the middle. That's okay. So there's our blend, and we've got history on that one. So if I want to, I should put curvature on those. So pick all of those curves together and then put curvature on, and then the scale will be the same for all of them. So we'll make that something like that. And then we can modify those. So if I say Q for query edit on that. Now you see if I extend that out there and then pull these into the center, you can see the curvature, instead of coming off at an angle, is actually heading towards G3 continuity. Of course, we could put G3 on. If you want G3 on, that's fine. But if you put G3 on, it ignores it in this case because we've only got degree 5. And so what's happening there is that because we've got degree 5, these CVs here, these 3 CVs here, are locked by the G2 at that end. So G3 is looking to move this one, but it can't do it because there is no, it's locked by the other end. If we increase it to degree 6, it should actually then affect the middle CV as well. So let's just do it that way. If you look at the curvature on this end, it actually looks almost like G3 continuity there. So you don't always need to increase this. You know, in theory, you need to increase this to degree 7 to get G3 on both ends. But if the curvatures look like they're G3, then you don't have to do that. You know, you can keep it as degree 6. And so we can move that around, see what we get. Now that's definitely not G3 there, that's G2 only. So maybe I should increase that to degree 7. If we want G3, we're going around that corner. And then we can activate that end, change that to G3. And because we've got history on, you know, it might not be enough just to modify that blend, because if we zoom into there, you can see it's slightly off the data, and it's off the data from this point. So we really need to move these CVs on the other curve. So if I move that inboard a bit and then fiddle around with the curve, the tangency as well, that went too far. Well, actually, the curvature looks quite nice there, really. If I bring this out, this is all going to flatten that. The CVs that you've got to watch if you're modifying this, when we project onto there, of course, we need to keep that CV there, can only move in and out in the Y, otherwise we won't get, we'll get a tiny little curve appearing or a little gap. We can't move that one anywhere other than in the Y direction. And this is, I can't remember whether this is in previous versions, but you notice the color of that top is light blue there because I'm not quite in top. When I press on it, it goes green. So it's another subtle thing in Alias that's well worth spotting, because it'll help you enormously.